Today we are beginning a journey into the life of Ethan, a young man whose existence was notably defined by the heavy weight of familial expectations and the imbalance of love within his household. This story is not merely about the struggles he faced as he grew up, but also about the unspoken dynamics that shaped him and his relationships. Ethan was the eldest son in a family that seemed perfect on the outside. From a young age, he understood, perhaps more than any child should, what it meant to be the anchor of the family. His mother, Eleanor, was a socialite who thrived on appearances. To her, the family's image mattered like a finely polished silver that one must keep shining at all costs. She relied on Ethan to be the steady, responsible one, a role he took on with a sense of duty that transcended his age. While other children played carelessly, Ethan often found himself tasked with responsibilities that would typically rest on an adult's shoulders. He became the dependable child, always trying to maintain harmony in a household brimming with tension, leaving his childhood behind without ever realizing it. His younger brother Leo, on the other hand, was the embodiment of charm and charisma. Born just a year later, Leo had a certain magnetic allure that drew attention from everyone around him. Yet, beneath that charm lay a deep-rooted entitlement. In a family filled with apparent adoration for Leo, he became accustomed to getting his way without consequence. It was as if he wore privilege like a cloak, using his charm not merely to navigate his way through life, but to manipulate those around him, particularly Ethan. Eleanor, in her quest to maintain a perfect family image, consistently excused Leo's reckless behavior. To her, Leo's mischief was a mere display of boyish charm, spirited antics to be celebrated rather than criticized. Meanwhile, she imposed a different standard on Ethan. Her constructive feedback often felt more like veiled criticism. "Ethan, you need to be more understanding," she would say, despite the overwhelming burdens he already carried. Each judgment felt like a stab to his chest, leaving him struggling to reconcile his role as the responsible son with his mother's unyielding expectations. Richard, their father, was a corporate lawyer, whose presence in the home was more of a shadow than a fatherly figure. He was physically present yet emotionally absent, consumed by the demands of his career. Occasionally, he would attempt to mediate disputes between the boys, but his efforts usually fell flat against Eleanor's authoritative insistence. In the chaos of their family, Richard was often sidelined, conceding to Eleanor's whims or Leo's dramatics instead of standing firmly for Ethan. This only added to the suffocating atmosphere that loomed over Ethan, who increasingly felt like a forgotten afterthought. The imbalance in their family dynamics opened up a gateway to a more sinister aspect of their relationship: the ongoing bullying Ethan faced from Leo. It began as typical sibling rivalry, but quickly morphed into a calculated assault on Ethan's self-worth. Leo mastered the art of manipulation, sabotaging Ethan's school projects, spreading rumors among extended family members, and belittling his achievements. The physical acts of bullying were blunted by their seemingly innocuous nature, buried beneath the guise of brotherly love. Each incident furled into a larger tapestry of emotional abuse that bound Ethan in a relentless grip of anxiety and self-doubt. Yet when Ethan sought help, Eleanor would wave it away, muttering, "Oh, Leo is just spirited, Ethan. You are being too sensitive." This dismissive retort became a familiar refrain, an anthem of his devaluation that echoed in the chambers of Ethan's mind. As time progressed, this family dynamic took its toll on Ethan. While he appeared like a sturdy oak tree, his roots were gradually being eroded by the storms of his inner turmoil. Underneath the polished exterior lay a tumultuous sea of inadequacy and despair, swells of anxiety crashing against the shores of his self-esteem. He instinctively began to withdraw into himself, seeking solace in isolation. Hours would drift by as he planned his escape, meticulously mapping out futures that felt untouchable in his current life, a life confined by the unyielding expectations of his family. This early stage of Ethan's life is a microcosm of the pronounced imbalance that often exists in families, where the scales of attention and love can tip dangerously. It is a reminder of the impact of parental dynamics on the development of a child's sense of self-worth. In the struggle to maintain familial harmony, Ethan became entangled in the very fabric of his family's dysfunction, setting the stage for a silent reckoning that would unfold in the chapters to come. Weeks before his final year architecture project was due, Ethan found himself caught in a cycle of exhaustion. He was determined to create something extraordinary for a prestigious architectural internship application, a chance to finally break free from the confines of his troubled family dynamics. However, that chance slipped through his fingers in a cruel twist of fate. Ethan's younger brother, Leo, had borrowed his external hard drive, filled with not just hours of work, but also the dreams and aspirations of a young man seeking validation and escape. The consequence of Leo's actions struck Ethan with the force of a thunderstorm. When confronted about the drive, Leo shrugged, dismissing it as a minor incident. "Stuff happens," he retorted nonchalantly, casting blame back onto Ethan for failing to have a backup. In that moment, Ethan felt a wave of devastation wash over him. It was not just about the loss of his work, it was the last straw in years of emotional torment. The weight of inadequacy and anxiety that he had been shouldering began to crush him under its relentless pressure. He was not just losing potential, he was losing hope. That evening, Ethan reached an emotional breaking point. Alone in his cluttered room, he sat silently, staring blankly at the wall. The visions of his future dimmed, clouded by despair. As he quietly began packing a small bag, preparing to leave without any explanation, the enormity of the moment hung heavy in the air, a poignant silence filled with unspoken words. Suddenly, there was a knock, a gentle, urgent rapping. It was Richard, Ethan's father. The sight of Ethan quietly packing shook Richard to his core. Until that moment, Richard had been a passive observer in the tumult of family dynamics, too entrenched in his demanding career to recognize the emotional turmoil brewing within his sons. With a voice thick with concern, he asked, "Ethan, where are you going?" Realizing the fragility of the situation and the gravity of his son's emotional state, he sat down beside Ethan, his presence a mix of urgency and compassion. Ethan, initially reluctant to share, eventually allowed the pain to spill over. He recounted Leo's careless act, the years of bullying, and how their mother's indifference felt like a suffocating blanket that stifled any flicker of self-worth he struggled to maintain. Listening intently, Richard's heart shattered as he grasped the full extent of Ethan's hurt. It was not just an external hard drive that Leo had lost, it was a part of Ethan's identity. With newfound clarity, Richard rose to the occasion. He discovered Leo's hidden hard drive in a chaotic pile of clothes in the younger brother's room, a symbol of Leo's lack of responsibility and the audacity with which he treated others' belongings. Confronting Leo, Richard's voice turned resolute and cold, articulating a disappointment that echoed through the years, his disapproval of the manipulation, the neglect, the emotional harm inflicted on Ethan. This was not merely a moment of anger, it was a father finally acknowledging his son's pain and addressing the toxic dynamics that had festered unchecked for too long. After the confrontation, Richard returned to Ethan and apologized, an earnest confession laden with regret. He laid bare his own childhood memories of being bullied by an older sibling, revealing how that history clouded his ability to act. Richard vowed to support Ethan in every possible way, promising to stand as a barrier between him and the emotional storms of their family. This revelation marked the beginning of a new chapter for both father and son as they began to navigate the daunting journey towards healing together. Richard, spurred by determination and newfound awareness, helmed the decision to assist Ethan in finding a small one-bedroom apartment near his university campus. It would be a space of independence, detached from the weight of his childhood. Richard's offer was straightforward but profound. He would cover all costs, enabling Ethan to focus on his studies and mental health without the looming shadow of financial distress. As Ethan moved into his modest apartment, he felt the burdens of his childhood home lift, even if only slightly. This new beginning, embodying a sense of autonomy he had long yearned for, also came with a promise of healing. Richard, keenly aware of the deep-seated emotions embedded in their tumultuous family history, researched specialists who dealt with family trauma. He made arrangements for Ethan to see a highly recommended therapist, ensuring treatment costs would not be a burden. However, not everyone was enthusiastic about this shift. Eleanor's reaction was one of outrage and disbelief. To her, Ethan's departure was nothing short of betrayal. "Ungrateful," she exclaimed, calling it dramatic and accusing him of abandoning his family when they needed him most. Her fury was misguided, focused on the perception of loyalty rather than recognizing the years of dysfunction that had pushed Ethan to this point. Yet Richard stood resolute, affirming that Ethan's well-being was a priority, vowing to provide unyielding support regardless of Eleanor's threats to withdraw financial assistance. Meanwhile, Leo found himself facing consequences for his actions. Richard dramatically cut Leo's allowance and revoked his access to family credit cards, initiating a much-needed lesson in accountability. Defiant, Leo was consumed by feelings of persecution, viewing his father's decisions as unfair treatment, while Eleanor continued to coddle him, directing her rage not at Leo but at Ethan. As Ethan embraced his new life, he found solace in the quiet independence his apartment provided. Slowly, he began to journal, reconnecting with old friends, sharing his experiences while exploring new passions surrounding architecture. Though the process was fraught with difficulty, each day was a testament to the resilience he had yet to fully recognize within himself. This chapter of Ethan's story illustrates the power of realization, the importance of standing up against emotional neglect, and the profound effects of seeking help. As one family's facade began to crack, another foundation was being laid, building something new, resilient, and hopeful amidst an ever-enveloping sea of chaos. The journey was far from over, but the path forward glowed ever so slightly, illuminated by Ethan's courage to confront the past. Settling into his small one-bedroom apartment was a significant step for Ethan. It represented both physical and emotional independence, a sanctuary away from the haunting echoes of his childhood tumult. Equipped with newfound determination and a fierce commitment to personal growth, he embraced his studies within the architecture program, dedicating himself to projects that allowed his creativity to flourish. Each late-night design session became a cathartic escape, a way to channel his pent-up emotions into something tangible and beautiful. Ethan's journey through therapy was equally transformative. With the assistance of a highly recommended specialist in family trauma, he embarked on a quest for healing, peeling back the layers of pain that had clung to him for so long. Session by session, he learned vital coping mechanisms that helped reframe his understanding of self-worth, resilience, and emotional expression. The work was not easy, often forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and his family dynamics. Yet, through each confrontation, Ethan began to reclaim his narrative. He found invaluable support, not just in therapy, but also in his new friendships at the university. One person who stood out during this period was Chloe, a charismatic sociology student with an innate ability to empathize with others. Their paths crossed during a university-wide volunteer event aimed at sustainable community development, an initiative Ethan had signed up for to engage with like-minded individuals who shared his passion for impactful design. Chloe exuded warmth and positivity, quickly drawing Ethan out of his shell. They connected effortlessly, exchanging stories of their lives, aspirations, and challenges. As Chloe listened to Ethan recount his past, he felt truly seen for the first time. She validated his feelings of inadequacy and pain, and encouraged him to articulate his experiences rather than bury them under responsibility and expectation. With Chloe by his side, Ethan learned that his struggles were not a source of shame, but rather a testament to his resilience and strength. As their friendship deepened, Ethan found himself navigating the complexities of relationships with newfound confidence. With Chloe's support, he began to assert his boundaries, distancing himself from toxic family dynamics while embracing the potential of new, healthier connections. Their bond blossomed into a romantic relationship during late-night study sessions, filled with laughter, moments of vulnerability, and dreams for the future. Ethan felt a sense of hope emerge for the first time, ignited not just by the relationship but also by his personal progress. He excelled in his architecture program, ultimately earning admission to a competitive master's program in urban planning, a dream he once thought eclipsed by familial strife. This accomplishment was not merely a professional milestone, it symbolized his ability to overcome adversities and reclaim his passion for design. In the warmth of Chloe's presence, Ethan felt free to envision a life beyond the constraints of his childhood. Their relationship flourished, characterized by mutual respect and encouragement, providing a stark contrast to the manipulation and neglect he had faced growing up. It was during this time that Ethan began to dream bigger. He envisioned a future where architecture was not solely about buildings, but about community and connection, a vision underscored by his commitment to sustainable urban design. With graduation approaching, Ethan decided it was time to introduce Chloe to his family during a holiday dinner. Nervous yet hopeful, he hoped that this would be an opportunity for acceptance and growth. He reflected on the possibility that perhaps there could be a pathway to healing within his family, even if it felt daunting. However, upon their arrival, it became evident that not everyone was prepared to embrace this change. Eleanor, his mother, greeted Chloe with a frosty demeanor, masking her discomfort with thinly veiled comments about Chloe's modest background and lifestyle choices. Eager to maintain her constructed facade of a perfect family, Eleanor struggled to adapt to the elements of Ethan's life that did not conform to her imagined ideals. Richard, however, shone through as a beacon of support, welcoming Chloe with open arms and displaying genuine interest in her interests and aspirations. He had matured significantly throughout the turmoil of the previous months, and his bond with Ethan had strengthened, allowing him to be the father Ethan had longed for. Meanwhile, Leo's behavior remained unchanged. Now in his early 20s, he still wrestled with the remnants of childhood entitlement, making snide remarks about Chloe's career choices and appearance. Though his charm had dulled, he sought to regain control over his narrative by belittling others, an instinct that revealed his own deep-seated insecurities. Chloe, perceptive and level-headed, navigated these interactions with grace, recognizing the underlying manipulation without allowing it to dampen her spirit. The contrast between this new chapter in Ethan's life and the dysfunction he had escaped was striking. As he built a new relationship with Chloe, he learned valuable lessons about healthy communication, boundaries, and unconditional support. He discovered that it was possible to forge genuine connections and in the process redefine what family truly meant. Ultimately, this segment of Ethan's journey serves to illuminate the profound impact of relationships forged in the fires of adversity. While the echoes of the past may linger, it is in the embrace of newfound friendships and the warmth of love that Ethan begins to paint a brighter vision for his future. Each triumph, every step taken toward healing, signifies not merely a departure from the pain but a celebration of strength, resilience, and the unwavering quest for a better life, one built upon the foundations of hope and empathy. Years have flown by since Ethan established his independent life away from the shadows of his childhood home. He dedicated himself to his work, surrounded by the new family he had cultivated, friends, mentors, and his beloved partner, Chloe. It was a period filled with a sense of hope and possibility. Ethan had learned to prioritize mental well-being, drawing strength from therapy and confronting the shadows of his past. His architectural career flourished, blossoming into a calling intertwined with his dreams of urban planning. Yet looming quietly in the corners of his new life was the specter of his brother Leo. Despite the tumultuous history between them, Ethan tried to convince himself that Leo was simply a product of their shared upbringing. He had hoped that, with distance and with the transformation he himself had undergone, Leo would grow up and mature in kind. Ethan focused on his ambitions and the joy of his own family. Compartmentalizing past grievances with Leo seemed like the healthiest option. Yet it was precisely when Ethan began to let his guard down that he experienced the unimaginable. Late one night, an unexpected barrage of messages pinged on Ethan's phone, jarring him from sleep. Always the vigilant brother, he instinctively braced for an emergency. However, as he opened the messages, his heart sank, his gut twisted, and all semblance of peace shattered. Leo, in a drunken state, sent a series of accusatory texts that pierced through the protective walls Ethan had built. The rambling and disjointed messages heavily implied that something had transpired between Leo and Chloe years ago, after a family gathering. Most disturbingly, Leo insinuated that Noah, Ethan's cherished son, might not be his biological child, framing this revelation as some twisted form of karmic retribution for Ethan's perceived privileged existence. The words danced menacingly across Ethan's screen, and with each line his heart sank further into despair. Shock quickly morphed into a dark cloud of confusion, anger, and betrayal. In just moments, the person he thought he knew, his own brother, became a stranger capable of unthinkable treachery. Ethan's mind raced as the implications of Leo's words settled heavily on his chest. He remembered the warmth of promises made, the love that had bonded them, and the innocence of childhood that now felt cursed by Leo's actions. When confronting Chloe, a sense of dread washed over him. If Leo's accusations held any truth, the ground beneath his world would crumble. He hesitated, grappling with emotions ranging from rage to a heart-wrenching sense of loss. Chloe, initially taken aback, hesitated as well. As Ethan revealed the gist of Leo's texts, her demeanor changed. Although she initially attempted to deny the accusations, her eyes clouded with guilt spoke volumes that no words could conceal. After moments of gripping silence, Chloe broke down and confessed. Several years prior, during a chaotic night filled with laughter and the haze of alcohol, she and Leo had shared an intimate moment, one that she immediately regretted. The weight of her admission, however, was coupled with the shock that it had remained a clandestine secret all this time. Chloe desperately argued that she had never intended for it to come to light, not when she began her serious relationship with Ethan, and certainly not after Noah's birth, but even her fervent pleas for forgiveness begged the question, how could she have allowed something so precarious to happen? Ethan was engulfed in a storm of betrayal and anguish. The realization that the very foundation of his most cherished relationship could have been built on a catastrophic lie was excruciating. The love he had for Chloe was now tainted by visions of her shared history with Leo. The thought of his son potentially carrying Leo's blood rendered him breathless. The past that had slowly faded into the shadows now rushed forth like a tidal wave, dragging him under, threatening to consume him whole. In the gut-wrenching aftermath, Ethan found himself standing at a precipice, wrestling with the decision of whether he could ever look at Chloe, or more painfully, Noah, the same way again. The love that had once felt so strong now lay shattered at their feet. A child's laughter echoed within the walls of his memory, and for the first time the sound became hollow, a painful reminder of the truth that clawed at Ethan's heart. Trust, once a cornerstone of his family, had been obliterated, leaving behind an echo of despair. With tumultuous emotions swirling around him, Ethan faced the grim reality that continued to unfold. Not only had he been betrayed by his brother, but the very person he had welcomed into his life with open arms had also committed an unforgivable act. The life he had painstakingly built, the sanctuary he thought he deserved, was slipping through his fingers. Each second felt heavier than the last, and the anguished whispers of doubt crept in as he pondered the darkest of questions. Would he ever be able to rise from this, or was this the end of everything he had fought so hard to create? Desperation loomed large as Ethan took in the full weight of his situation. In confronting the raw emotional trauma inflicted by both Leo and Chloe, he understood that this was only the beginning of a painful, complicated journey. The horizon he once envisioned, one filled with hope, healing, and unconditional love, now felt impossibly distant, hidden behind the veil of betrayal and confusion. Emotions ran high, and decisions lingered precariously in the balance. The road ahead would not be easy, and the choices he had to make would surely change the course of his life forever. He realized, with a heart heavy with sorrow, that understanding the depths of betrayal would require him to stare into the uncomfortable shadows of his past, and that is where the real reckoning would take place. Having spent years carefully cultivating a life free from the shadows of his past, Ethan suddenly found it all jeopardized by the toxic whispers of betrayal from both his brother Leo and his partner Chloe. Their intermingled histories, secrets kept under layers of charm and naivety, now lay bare under the harsh light of revelation. In a moment, the world Ethan had painstakingly reconstructed began to flicker and crumble into grains of emotional detritus. His heart raced as he mulled over Leo's brazen texts, while still locked in an anguished confrontation with Chloe. Each word Leo had sent pierced through him like arrows dipped in poison. The implication of infidelity wrapped in twisted familial loyalty shattered Ethan's understanding of love and trust. Noah, his son, whom he had nurtured and loved unconditionally, was now ensnared in a web of potential paternity that Ethan had never fathomed. The mere thought sent waves of nausea crashing over him. As Chloe stood before Ethan, her eyes darting from avoidance to pleading desperation, her confession transformed an ordinary confrontation into an 800-pound gorilla in the room. It was one night, Ethan, one mistake, she implored, her voice quivering. I promise, it meant nothing. But to Ethan that phrase now rang hollow, reverberating with the sound of betrayal and foreseeably diminishing trust. In the marrow of his bones, Ethan felt himself unraveling. The life they had constructed together, filled with dreams, laughter, and a shared commitment, faced the threat of dissolution. Noah's joyful laughter, a melody that had been the backdrop of their union, now echoed through space, marred with doubt. Ethan's thoughts cascaded into darkness. Could he ever look at Chloe and see her as the same person he loved, the mother of his child? The lovers' hallmarks of shared intimacy and dreams became wretched reminders of a mistake that made a mockery of everything they had built. Feeling a burgeoning need for clarity, Ethan picked up his phone, trembling fingers hovering over Chloe's contacted name. Yet the reality he faced was stark. He could not banish images of betrayal simply by wishing it away. He needed a moment to breathe, to regroup, but in that haze of uncertainty, he decided he had to summon the courage to confront Leo. Moved forward by a potent mix of anxiety and dread, he dialed Richard. His father's voice felt like a lifeline amidst a turbulent sea. Yet Ethan's raw anguish cut through the normalcy. Richard had always been the steady anchor, but this situation demanded more than platitudes. As details spilled from Ethan's lips, Richard's silence morphed into simmering rage. In an unexpected turn, Richard confronted Leo, not with wrath but with a firm resolve. Their conversation brimmed with disappointment and a cautionary sense of finality. "You do not understand the ramifications of your actions, Leo," Richard said, each word laden with years of frustration, care, and protective fatherly instinct. So began a cascade of actions, legal foundations laid for the freedom and dignity Ethan desperately sought. As the truth seeped deeper into the fabric of their interactions, Richard immediately enlisted a top-tier divorce attorney for Ethan, mapping out a course that would inevitably sever ties with Chloe while maintaining focus on Noah's well-being. The primal fear of losing his son loomed large in Ethan's heart, yet he resolved to take the necessary steps to protect himself from any further emotional destruction. The heartbreak of severing ties with Chloe brought a new weight of sorrow, but Ethan made a choice. He would not allow her betrayal to define his future. He needed to concentrate on healing and finding a new path for himself and Noah, free from the ghosts of Chloe's past. On the other hand, a quiet tension hung in the air as Eleanor grappled with the fallout of Leo's heinous actions. Initially, she sought to defend him, yet the weight of Richard's firm ultimatum forced her to reassess her priorities. Standing at the crossroads of loyalty and reality, she ultimately chose Richard and Ethan's side, albeit begrudgingly. However, it became clear that she remained conflicted, her underlying resentment ever present. Months rolled on as Ethan navigated the aftermath of betrayal with determination. Each day carried a different level of healing. It demanded fortitude but eventually rewarded him with a newfound strength. He embraced solitude, finding rejuvenation in the quiet moments where he could recalibrate his thoughts and feelings. As the hallmark of tragedy often asserts itself, he found himself reflecting on the interplay of bonds that shaped his life, the family's irrevocable flaws, the complexities of love, and the recognition that trust once breached reshapes every dynamic irrevocably. Even as Leo and Chloe floated in a tumult of their own making, their lives steeped in instability, Ethan carved a path toward recovery, reconstructing his identity around strength and resilience, thriving in his professional pursuits, deepening friendships that had long awaited his attention. With Richard steadfast at his side, a renewed father-son bond developed, a tapestry woven from shared pain, honesty, and understanding. They began assembling a new vocabulary of family, one that excluded betrayal but embraced accountability and transparency. As Ethan embraced the quiet courage within, he laid out the pieces of his life into a tableau of new beginnings, one that promised growth, hope, and a bright horizon he could finally call his own. At long last, amid the remnants of what once was, Ethan learned the invaluable lesson that while family may be inexorably complicated and fraught with emotional heft, it is ultimately defined by love, integrity, and an unyielding commitment to heal, even in the shadow of betrayal. Thank you for taking this journey with us. If you found this story engaging, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel for more deeply layered narratives. Share your thoughts on family dynamics, betrayal, and resilience in the comments below. Until next time, take care and keep seeking your own path of healing and growth.